Thanks so much. This is my wife, Kathleen. We've been married almost 8 years now, and this is our 3-year-old daughter, Amelia. We call her Emmy.
I love your family and your background. And tell us a little bit of what your work is like as an ER doctor.
So I'm trained in emergency medicine. That's my specialty, and that's what I work every single shift that I work. Emergency medicine is a very unique part of the field of medicine. Every field is completely different and different personalities, but essentially, it's we see all comers when they first show up to the hospital, and so emergency medicine is taking care of and stabilizing any patient that walks through the door, regardless of what kind of condition might be going on. And we are also interacting with all specialties throughout the hospital. And so communication is a big part of our job too, communicating with the EMS ambulance crews who bring the patients to us, and then interacting with any specialty in the hospital to make sure the patients are taken down the right pathway and cared for by the right specialties, the right doctors. Every day is a new day. It doesn't matter. You have no idea what to predict. So every single patient is different. You have no idea what the next diagnosis will be. And so, emergency medicine tends to be a little bit of a adrenaline junkie. They kind of like the excitement of things changing all the time. And so I just really enjoy caring for all types of patients, regardless of what brought them in the first place.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That sounds really dynamic and challenging. It sounds like it's also something you love to do because you like the changes. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So,
and it could be very difficult for many other people because some other people like to just be in a predictable environment. In this case, nothing is predictable, right?
Yeah. So definitely, while it brings excitement every single day, it is one of the biggest challenge. It's very hard to focus on a single task because while I'm conducting one task, I could be interrupted by 10 other tasks at the same exact time, and constantly determining which is the most pressing task to address first. And so it's a constant reprioritization of all the tasks that I have at hand. And so there's a lot of multitasking. It could be challenging. It could be stressful at times, but it's exciting.
Right. So were you trained, and is that your past experience being able to multitask and being able to think on your feet, right?
I like to think that I'm a multitasker, but there's no true skill in multitasking. People, I think it's a common myth that we think we could accomplish many different things all at the same time. I don't think it's possible. You just have to keep reprioritizing, and it's very short periods of focused attention on each individual task. But it's a skill that you develop. You just have to keep practicing year after year. And I still have lots to learn. And I think every year my goal is to get better at dealing with multiple tasks all in a short time frame.
Right. Just because the job requires you. In general, as you were saying earlier, it's good to focus on the work at hand. We're not promoting and encouraging multitask per se. It's just really what you need to do because of your ER role. There are times that multitasking could be helpful, but it cannot be a sustained lifestyle. Like we need to learn to focus. That's
exactly.
Nice. Right. Yeah. So how did you get so interested taking on this role? What was it growing up that brought you to where you are, that you find this to seem like your passion?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about my background. Up until high school, didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to pursue as a career. And I think what's important is to stay open-minded through every phase of your education, training, etc. I volunteered some in the hospital and partook in other extracurricular activities, and through college as well, volunteered in different opportunities, different parts of the hospital. And what I've noticed is I was always drawn to the medical field. And once I was pursuing different areas of the hospital in the medical field, I realized I was always drawn to the most acute conditions, meaning the most rapidly paced conditions or most emergent conditions. And I just realized as I was exposing myself to many different fields that I was always drawn back to emergency medicine. And so it just took me a while to realize that. And so you don't have to decide that until halfway through medical school. And I try to stay open-minded up until then. And that's when I realized I had a love for it. I was really drawn to it. I had some characteristics that allowed me to succeed in this industry. So yeah, pursued it, and here I am.
Wow.
Would
so
you care to?
like, yeah, go ahead, Dr. Jeff.
Jeremy, you mentioned you have some characteristics that, would you care to elaborate on that? What makes you better, or what makes you like taking care of acute problems?
So emergency medicine is unique in the manner that, again, with multiple tasks thrown at you all at the same time, trying not to be too stressed out about it and panicking. So you have to stay level-headed to rationally think through every single problem. And so certain characteristics you would need is being okay with multiple stresses, multiple tasks being thrown at you all at once. And also there's, there could be critiques as well, people second guessing what you were doing, and you're interacting with so many different specialties as well. And so you have to stay humble. So I think it takes a humble personality as well to approach every specialist saying, hey, you know more than I do, but I need your help. And so I'm constantly every day asking so many people to help me out. And so it takes humility to acknowledge that I alone cannot take care of this problem. I need additional help. So I'm recruiting additional help.
Wow. I heard so much about your humility and also being open-minded. I heard throughout your young age, you may not know exactly what you want to do, right? It's not like, oh, I know I'm going to be a doctor. Some people are more sure. You weren't, but you were open-minded. And then I see that you kept exploring. You tried many different things, and then you learn how you're drawn to particular areas and discover the characteristic and your strength that are very suited to the work that you're doing now, while staying humble. That's a very good lesson for our young people. So
I got a question.
Yeah.
Please go ahead. Yes, please.
Yeah, I noticed that your college major was philosophy, neuroscience, psychology, and biology. You study half of what college offers. What were you thinking?
This might actually speak a little bit to an emergency medicine physician, but we're interested in a lot of different things. We can't make up our minds sometimes. And so my major primarily was philosophy, neuroscience, psychology. It was a multidisciplinary major that combined these three different fields, but essentially it was a cognitive science. So looking at the mind in three different ways. And so I just really liked that very broad multidisciplinary approach. And the second major was in biology, just because naturally I was drawn to that field as well. But my primary focus was on the cognitive science. And I think that just kind of tells me about emergency medicine. I like a lot of different things in medicine. I like all types of conditions. And so it makes sense why I chose emergency medicine.
Okay. Just follow up for our young audience here who may be interested in, who may develop an interest in medicine. And my major was electrical engineering. What would you recommend them? What should they approach their college studies? So they would aim for, yeah.
Yeah, so through high school and college, people might have different recommendations, but I'm a strong believer that a diverse background makes you a stronger physician, or whatever career you choose in the future. Having that diverse knowledge is the most useful. So I think in medical school, my smartest colleagues were ones who were, English majors, philosophers. They had a past life as an engineer. So I think, not only focus just because you want to be a doctor one day, not focusing only on biology. then you become an expert in biology, but you know nothing else about life. And so I think diversifying your knowledge is key. And so in college, I would recommend pursuing what you're most interested in, but staying open-minded, trying not to be so narrow-minded when you first start, and being willing to take a lot of different courses that the college offers you. And same goes with experiences, volunteering, partaking in different experiences in all different parts of the community. And I think that makes you a stronger person, develop stronger character, and ultimately whatever career you choose will make you more successful.
Wow, very well said. Diversity, open-minded, willing to learn. So what are some examples of volunteer experience that you had when you were a young teenager?
So mostly through high school. Again, I did some volunteer work through a hospital because in the back of my mind, I was always interested in the medical field. And so there are various parts of the hospital that a high schooler can get involved with. It could be something like handing out newspapers or water to patients, or helping the pharmacists fill certain medications. And that was just to expose myself to the medical field. But I was also really drawn to education and teaching. And so definitely very much involved in tutoring and involved in education of younger kids. Was quite involved with my church and youth camps, for lack of a better word, but basically education and development of primarily ages 7th grade to 12th grade, but some younger kids as well. And I think as I pursued medicine, I realized my job is also teaching, whether it's teaching patients or nurses or my colleagues. And so I definitely enjoyed that aspect where we're learning and teaching every day.
Wow, it sounds like you are always living your dream because you know your passion of learning and teaching and investing in people's lives and being able to always serve others, not just give me and me, myself, and I, thinking about yourself. And that's very much of a mindset of a doctor, isn't it? To helping people, saving lives.
Yeah. To tell you the truth, the short answer, yes, it's a dream and it's an honor to be in the position that I am every single day. To be used by God to care for others, especially in the emergency room where people really are at one of the most vulnerable moments in their lives, where they're very sick or they perceive themselves to be very sick. And so it is quite an honor to be in that position. Like any job that you may pursue in the future, there are days you lose sight of that calling. And so certainly there could be stresses and challenges in life that sometimes make me feel that it's not an honor and get very stressed about my job. But it does take, very intentional reminders to myself that it is an honor to be here. And so to be joyful and thankful, it doesn't come naturally, but you have to keep, being prayerful through it and just reminding myself every day that, it's a great place to be. It's an honor to be thankful always.
Wow. And I love your word, your calling. So my ministry is named Call to Work. It's to help people to understand that we're all called to work, whatever you do, and that we can live out that calling every day, like you're sharing with us. So you mentioned your faith seemed to be an important aspect of your life, of what you do and how you live your life. Can you share a bit how you came to be a Christian and how does that impact you over the years?
Yeah, so I could speak a little bit about my faith journey. I've been blessed to be born into a family of very strong believers. My parents, I'm Korean American. My parents are from Korea, but immigrated before my brother and I were born. And they were both quite involved ever since I can remember it was pretty much a Korean ethnic church. And so naturally, I became very involved through youth ministry as well, all through high school and even after high school. And so just having that example of my parents has been a huge blessing in teaching me about my faith and helping me learn how to live out my faith. And then through college was an instrumental part of my faith development and and growth, because it took me away from all I knew about Christianity. And so I had a very narrow-minded view of Christianity only through the lens of a Korean ethnic church. There's definitely pros and cons to that, but I think being when I was in St. Louis, and so I was in a more Midwestern Presbyterian, it's just a very different type of faith culture. And that really opened my eyes to see God in a different way. There's definitely a renewed focus on the word and studying the word and learning more about the Bible and how it all connects. And I think through that, seeing that part of my faith combined with my upbringing really solidified my faith, and just realizing the word is true, gotta study it, gotta learn it, and gotta figure out ways to live it out every day. And every phase of my life, it's a different journey in my faith. Because now, in the real world, away from your tight-knit community of common believers, it's more of a daily practice of how to live out your faith in your work, with your coworkers, with other neighbors and friends. And so always learning, always growing.
Amen.
Jeremy.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Now is the pastor and me speaking. You mentioned the word that when you grew up in just all Koreans or ethnic churches, it has its pros and cons. I think many of our young people here grew up in the Chinese churches, and then what are the not so good thing about this kind of the growing up in faith?
Yeah, so there's the role of the ethnic church in the US is you can't deny it. It helps a lot of immigrant families build a community, grow in faith, and so a lot of my identity growing up as a Korean American in Long Island, which was 90% white and very few minorities, it really helped build up my identity. And so without the Korean ethnic church, I wouldn't be the person that I am. And some of my closest friends are still from people who I grew up with in youth group at church. The Korean American church that I grew up with definitely has different focuses on the faith. And so what I meant by that is my only view of Christianity and the only way I thought that you can profess your faith and live out your faith was as a Korean American in that church. And so I guess just kind of diversifying and realizing, God is way bigger than just being part of a Korean American church. He spans across all cultures, all languages, all ethnicities, any background, any way of the way you sing your songs, the way you pray. It doesn't matter how you do it. God is bigger than that. And it took me, I had to step out of that bubble to realize how big God is. And so, so that is one thing that I didn't see as much as a high schooler that I learned through college and beyond.
Amen. And you see, God is the creator of all human race, and it's one race, right? And with multiple ethnic background, and every race is beautiful in His sight. Wow. So when you're in college, you totally learn that it's not your parents' faith anymore. It's Jeremy Kim's faith that you are taking it on yourself and learning and expanding. And you said you're growing up, your parents, how they live out the faith really impact you, and it's been a blessing. Can you give some examples? What you mean by that? Is it about taking you to church? Is it about reading the Bible? Is it about their lifestyle?
It's all of the above. They were very involved, meaning going to church maybe 3 to 4 times a week, and felt like my brother and I were dragged along, and we just played with our friends as our parents were involved, whether through choir, Bible studies, etc. But also at home, they tell us to read the Bible, but they're also reading the Bible. They're telling us to be kind to others, and we kind of see the way they interact with others. And so fortunately, we see that they're not living a two-faced life that honestly many Christians can have. And so it's just a huge blessing to see my parents, the way they lived at home, the way they lived at church and in their workplace. And it was consistent. And so I'm very thankful to see that. And right now it's a goal to always live that way as well. Am I the same Jeremy at church, at work, at home, with my friends? And so it's not always easy to do, but I had some great examples before me.
Amen. So it's really walking the talk, and that you see it not just in words, but also in actions, right? And that's a big impact, and that's so true. And when you mentioned how to practice, and it's everyday and growing experience, can you give some examples how you practice your faith in the workplace? How can it come alive? I'm sure we're faced with multiple challenges in a world with value that may not always be biblical.
Yeah, so this is an everyday challenge, and everyday level of success changes quite a bit. But essentially, I'm communicating with 20 to 50 people on any given day, maybe 20 patients, interacting with 20 nurses and some of my colleagues and other doctors. And so I think communication is key, and not just the words you say, but the way you say it. And so treating everyone with kindness, with respect, never being short with anyone. And so I think it becomes very apparent to any coworker that you work with, the way you treat patients, the way you treat your colleagues and interact with them and speak to them. And so I think it's very easy for other coworkers to know your character. And so it's always, gratifying to hear, if someone gives me positive feedback saying, oh, thanks, Dr. Kim, for speaking to the patient in that manner and answering all those questions. That was very kind of you. That's great to have those positive reinforcements. Of course, there are moments where, I go home and I wish my interaction, my communication with the patient or with the nurse went in a different way. And so it is a challenge every single day, every single minute. It's a different interaction. So it's not easy to do, but something to strive for.
I love that. You're just so down to earth and grounded. And I heard the word communication from the very beginning when you first started. And now you again emphasize the importance of communication. And for me, I do a lot of leadership training and teaching. And next year, I'm going to focus a lot on communication, because whatever you do, how you communicate and how you lead really is reflected by how you talk to people. And I love your value that you shared: respect, kindness, and your attitude and your action really come through consistently. So we open to the young people if you have questions to ask Jeremy or Dr. Kim. So how about growing up throughout your whole life so far, your young life, relatively young, what would be some pivotal moments, that particular stage that really shape you? Or I'm sure every stage is important, but what would be the one most important life stage that really contribute to the most of who you are today? That kind of a turning point, or?
Yeah. So I would say college was the most pivotal moment in my life, because I was taken out of that New York bubble and brought to the Midwest in St. Louis, and my faith journey through I had a really great relationship with my college pastor and through my church in St. Louis, but also my closest friends. I think it really built up my character and my personality traits and really shaped me to become who I am. And at the same time, I met my wife in college. So I gotta say that's the biggest change in my life, is her impact in my life as well.
Beautiful. So I heard that you're involved in InterVarsity in college.
So it wasn't InterVarsity. Yeah, so I was involved, through college fellowship. So the campus fellowship that I was a part of was a little bit different from some of the InterVarsity groups. It was a church-based organization, meaning it was a church-sponsored presence on the campus. So a staff member from church was very involved in our college and several surrounding colleges. And one part of that, just one great advantage to that, was just reminding myself how I'm part of this body of college students at Washington St. Louis, but also I'm very much a part of a body of believers in the local church. And
yes.
So that taught me how to get more involved with the local church, helped me connect with other generations. I love my friends, my peers, but the type of wisdom you can learn from people who are 20 to 30 years ahead of you is completely different. And even now in the church that we're in Austin, we've really sought out some older, wiser leaders, and the type of advice they can give you is completely different from what your peers can give you. So I think it helps to have both of that. Some of your peers, some people a little bit younger than you, a little bit older than you. And so being part of a local church was really a big part of my faith journey as well.
That is so wise. Continue to demonstrate your humility and your open-mindedness to learn from others and cross generations. And at the same time, I'm sure, minister to others as well. I know you must be a blessing to the younger generation. And I would imagine you're a blessing to your peers and even to the older ones and to us. We're learning from you, Dr. Kim. So we're thankful for that. Sound like your relationship, your parents have been good. Can you tell us how that was formed and how, if you had any challenge with your parents?
Every child has challenges with their parents. And so definitely there are things throughout childhood that you may, kind of regret, or there are plenty of challenges. And one big challenge with my relationship with my parents was probably a communication barrier, where my dad works in a bank, and so he's working with American colleagues, so his English was very proficient. And my mom worked in a Korean dental office, and so her English was not very proficient, and so our communication was a lot of mixed of my very bad Korean, their less than perfect English, and so definitely the way we communicate is not like two native speakers. And so I think that was one big hindrance to building a stronger relationship. Honestly, I think we had a very healthy relationship overall, and I'm very thankful for my parents. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to speak of beyond that. I mean, there's definitely challenges. My mom, it feels like when I'm at that age, that she's nagging at me to get off the TV or stop playing computer games and focus on my studies. And of course, you want to hear that as a kid, but in retrospect, you're thankful for the type of healthy habits you develop at a younger age.
Love that. I think many of our young people can identify with you, Dr. Kim, in terms of the communication challenges with the parents who may not be proficient in English and all the nagging and such. And I think you really show your respect and your love for your parents and appreciation. That is tremendous.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
Jeremy, I got a question here that says that someone asked, did you have conflict with your parents over TV and video games?
Yeah, plenty of conflicts. And of course, if parents go to work, they don't know, and play computer games all day. If I had my choice, I would do that 24/7. But of course, if I didn't have those conflicts and I could do whatever I want, then there's no way I would be the person that I am. So you need the discipline from your parents, hopefully in a loving manner, and you got to respect them and listen to them. There's always conflict, and as a child, I think my priorities are such that the most important thing is for me to play my computer games and play with my friends, or go outside and not study at all. But that's not true at all. So yeah, conflicts is inevitable and important for growth.
And I heard the word you mentioned, some healthy habits, because of your parents nagging and because of how I suppose you probably respect their nagging. And that's how you become who you are today, instead of just doing whatever you want. So you're building up some healthy habits. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's how you learn and grow. A lot of the healthy habits of, for example, studying. It took me a while to really learn how to study. And to tell you the truth, in high school, not always the most studious student in class, but every step of the way through college, through med school, you're building up on those foundations and building stronger habits and building up character, essentially, through perseverance.
So here we go. What are your studying tips? We're all eager to learn, even though you're not the most studious.
Yeah. So through high school and most of college, I was a big procrastinator. And I think procrastination is one of the biggest hindrances of succeeding. And so I think through med school, I learned a lot of what I should have learned much earlier, which is stop procrastinating, study sooner, take more notes. You know, I think I realized one of the biggest tips is taking as many notes as possible. And so I would, you know, take the notes from what I learned in lecture and translating it into my own language so that I could exactly understand it the way I want to understand it. I'm a very visual person, so drawing pictures and diagrams in certain ways for me to remember really easily. But yeah, it's hard work. It's basically the bottom line. There's no easy trick to it. You just have to keep working at it.
And yet also leveraging your study skill, your learning skill, right? Some people are visual, like you said. Some people are auditory. Some people are kinesthetic. Use the different tools and your passion and the way you learn best to internalize and summarize and reflect on what you learn. Another thing is not to procrastinate. And we hope for you to come back to tell us more about time management or even relationship building, including how you got to meet Kathleen and how you recommend dating experience should be someday again.
Yeah, beautiful. You know that, did you know that your father-in-law goes around and says playing video game is from the devil? I mean, almost like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's
Well,
totally
he
useless.
didn't know me in high school. Yeah, he didn't know me in high school, so I'm glad.
Or else he wouldn't let you marry his daughter.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
tell
well,
us, so as a teenager, how do we face that? Because I got asked by parents all the time, especially during pandemic. We are literally tied to the computer and online for good reasons, and some are for not so good reasons, right? Because we're doing online class, online meetings, and all that. So how would you advise us as a young person struggling with quote unquote addiction or connection to the network, to online?
struggling with video game and procrastinations.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure every teenager deals with a component of that. I wish I had an answer for it. And I think I'm learning that right now with my 3-year-old child, to make sure she's developing the right habits and making sure she doesn't see me on the screen all the time on my phone. I think what's key is actually the outdoors, just getting out there and trying to meet people face to face, and much preferable for you to play with your friends, you know, at a basketball court or outside rather than just interacting over a screen. And I think humans by nature, we're meant to be with others. And so the screen is somewhat of a substitute for that, and could be a dangerous substitute. And so just trying to prioritize and focus on relationships with friends and family members. And yeah, hopefully with that, you spend less time on the screen.
So well said. In just your short couple minutes, represented tons and tons of workshops that parents attend. Because a lot of times we tend to go online more because of the virtual world, that we feel quote unquote comfortable, like a caveman or cavewoman, that we're hiding ourselves, and thought that we can find our own achievement and our own identity in the virtual world. And yet what you're saying is that we got to live in the real world. Let relationship with real people take priority over the virtual world, because then you get lost in your virtual world. Wow, that is so powerful. Thank you. Are there any questions from the young people in the last 3 minutes we have with Dr. Kim? I love how you're so
Jeremy,
down to earth. Yes.
if there's no other one, tell us a story of one of the most memorable of your patients. Yeah.
Most memorable.
Yeah.
One thing that just jumps out is something in the past year. It's not always this dramatic. On TV, it's always very dramatic, but there was an approximately 43-year-old gentleman who was just checking in the waiting room, and he collapsed to the floor. And so the nurses rushed him back, not knowing what's going on. But as soon as he came back, we realized his heart had stopped and his heart was in an abnormal rhythm. And so we had to shock him many times with electricity and get his heart back, and had to go to emergency procedure and stay in the hospital, a lot of different testing done and treatment. And then found out about a week later that he walked out completely normal. And so that was just a very, very, cool experience to be a part of, and just to see that, he's reconnected with his family, he's healthy, he's doing well. And so just seeing that impact that we have on this man's life, he went from essentially death to going back to normal life, was just a great experience, and a reminder of what we can do in our medical field and how we're used by God to impact others.
Someone
Truly
asked that, do you
life-changing.
pray with your patients? Yeah. And whether your coworker knows you are a Christian.
Yeah, so the question
Yes.
is, you pray for your patient, and maybe sometimes with your patient. The question is for first. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So the first question of praying with patients, I have not, maybe once or twice since medical school. It is a little bit challenging in the US, but there are moments where there might be an appropriate time to do that. It's probably like a whole nother workshop for this, but it's a very delicate relationship that doctors have with their patients. I absolutely pray for my patients all the time, and sometimes as I'm in the room, they might not know it, but I'm praying for them. And as much medical knowledge we have in our industry, it's impossible for us to heal people. It's really God who does it, and so I have to be dependent on God through every interaction. So constantly praying for others. And the last question about whether or not my coworkers know about me being Christian, and so in the workplace, on my everyday, running around during the shift, it doesn't come up, but as we interact outside of the workplace, and the people who I know better do know that. And so it's kind of sharing your life outside of the workplace.
Thank
And you
you.
were not hiding your faith, and it's a natural showing of your faith. And the fact that you shared how you communicate and care with kindness and respect already demonstrate and differentiate you being different, because you're living out your faith and your biblical value. So there's a question from the audience. As parents, how can I encourage to lead my kids more turn to their faith? My English is not so good, and I don't know much about their friends or their study in school. Is that a big problem? That's a parent asking.
So I'm learning. I only have a 3-year-old, so I've much to learn in the next few generations to answer that question better. But I think in general, I don't think parents. What I'm learning, at least with my 3-year-old, is, of course, my job to guide her in the right path in life. But I just have to be prayerful and know that I alone cannot change my daughter's path in life, and just being prayerful for her and setting a good example and saying the right things and being wise, sharing wisdom in that manner. But ultimately, it's honestly out of our control. And so giving up that control to God and dependent on Him. So that's what I'm learning right now as a parent, and I have much to learn.
Amen. And we always say we cannot be perfect parents, but we need to be praying parents. And you're right on, right? How do we guide and walk the talk and role model for the children?
Amen.
Thank you. So we want to make sure that we build relationship with our children, be role model to them, and help them build their responsibility growing up to be independent and to be mature. Bye-bye. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, I should mention, we do have a homework. I apologize. And the homework is to name 3 things you learned from the interview with Dr. Jeremy Kim. 3 lessons you learned from Dr. Jeremy Kim's sharing today.